Hey guys, Wax with Ironman 4x4, and today I'm going to show you how to get this Ironman 4x4 raid bumper. It's part number BBR075 put on the front of your Ram 1500. If you're going to work on a garage floor, make sure your truck's in park, set your e-brake, chalk your tires if you're lifting the front, and if you're in a shop, be safe during your shop stuff. Safety brief over. Pop your hood. Open your hood. Get rid of potpourri. Grab a clip removal tool, and we're gonna pop out 6 of these on the top plastic cover or plenum. Activate close-up shot. Freaking baby cakes. Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna take this off. I'm just gonna sit there. Right there. Now grab a 10mm socket, and we're gonna pull a bunch of those bolts out. All right, gotta do 4 of these. Quattro. And don't forget, these coarse thread ones go on the outside, the fine thread ones go here. So I'm gonna push that forward just a hair's breadth, and then put these back so I don't lose them. Coarse thread goes into plastic, fine thread goes into the steel support. You can also just get a piece of foam or cardboard and stick them in there. All right, so we're gonna pull from the bottom, and that pops right out. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, this is the best part. If you don't know how to find random holes that you don't need for anything on your truck, Ram included these great arrows. You just follow them, and they point to these holes. All right, I got the truck lifted up a little bit higher just so I can have easier access. We've got this little access panel here, so I'm gonna pop this clip out. And again, try not to break it. I'm gonna get after this clip right here, and then we're gonna loosen these 8s right here. All right, now with that out of the way, I'm gonna pull this fender liner out. There we go. And I can kind of peel that back and tuck it behind the tire. All right, now we gotta get to this 10mm bolt back in here. That's what holds this lower piece underneath the headlight. So grab a 10mm. We will get that guy loosened out. All right, so got that 10 out, set that aside. So you kind of want to push this whole piece down and forward. Hi, so now take a body clip removal tool, and I'm gonna pop out this bumper wire harness connector right here, and then I'm gonna go up here, pop that out like that. Cool, now I can see what we're doing. So to get this guy undone, there's a red safety. So you might grab yourself a clip or something, flathead screwdriver you can get in there. I'm gonna pop that forward. Now we can push down on this gray tab here and unplug it. Cool. We got one more wire harness connector. It's right here. So I'm gonna press on that tab. There we go. That should be the wire harnesses for the front bumper. It's just those 2 main ones. All right, now we're ready to pull the bumper off, and pretty straightforward. Grab an 18mm wrench and a socket. You've got 1, 2, and 3 18mm nuts that need to come off those threaded studs. To get to the top one, you're gonna need a wrench. The bottom 2, I think you can use your a socket. We'll give it a try. 3 on this side, 3 on that side. And once we get that just spun a few turns, it should just spin right off. And then I'm gonna leave that just a couple threads on, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Ow. All right, with those 6 18mm nuts off, I'm gonna pull this shell off. It's not that heavy. I'm gonna push up on the plastic piece. Well, it's heavier than I thought. Let's get this plastic splash guard off. You're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these plastic clips. And I've kind of learned that if you just get them out a little bit, then get up behind them and use the actual plastic guard to pull them down. That keeps them from breaking. There we go. Yeah, that's the ticket. Don't break. Got it, did not break. Didn't break. Ooh, that didn't break, awesome. Wow, gonna be a good day, 100%, A+. All right, now we're gonna get this upper bumper guard off, and to do that, we've got all these little 10 mils hidden in here. There's one here, 3, 4, 5, 6, same on the other side. So grab a 10 millimeter socket. You might need to use a combination of tools. I've got a little mini power ratchet, and that's gonna work perfect, so. And I'm gonna leave that one in the middle, because leave hardware in the center so stuff doesn't come crashing down on you. Now I'm gonna take this one out. Okay, now we can unclip this upper plastic piece, and you wanna go slow and be careful. This part here makes me really nervous because there's a clip here and a clip here. So to do it, I'm gonna kind of come down and then lift the plastic piece up and I'm there, sweetness. That is our weakness. And then I just wanna be careful because this is a nice painted piece. I will set this aside so I can sell it on the gray market. All right, now we gotta get these cheek pieces out, and we got one more 10 mil sitting right in there. Cool. All right, the truck's pulled apart. Now we wanna get all of our hardware and our pieces laid out. I always like to do this, it's a good idea. You wanna make sure you take a good inventory and that all the hardware that you have matches up with your bill of materials in your instructions. It's gonna be a lot easier to get this winch tray hung over the frame horns if we can mock up this recovery point onto the winch tray. So take your recovery point, it's gonna go in front of the face of the winch tray and over the outside. Then I'm gonna take an M12 bolt, and from behind I'm gonna feed it through that hole right here. Take a nut, spin it down, finger tight, and this will keep everything sort of in place while we get it hung. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So I've set up 2 M12s with flat washer, split washer, these bolts right here. I'm gonna stick these in my pocket. One goes right here, one goes right here. So I'm gonna have those in my pocket ready to go. These M10s, I'm just gonna tuck through here to hold it in place so it doesn't move on me. Then I'm gonna grab underneath the recovery points like this, come up at an angle, and go on the inside, and then up and behind that face. Awesome. And then, of course, everything's easier with a friend, but you can do it by yourself. I'm gonna slide that bolt in through here, this one through there. So I've got this M12 threaded in here. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna undo this 18 here that was holding the recovery point to the winch tray, and we're gonna flip it around with a flat washer, grab another big flat washer and a split washer and a nut, and then grab yourself an 18 mil socket and 18 mil wrench, and we'll tighten those things down. I've got that set up there. I'm gonna run same setup back here. Now before we lock all that down, what I wanna do is grab an 18 and we're gonna tighten that in and pull all that up on these pedestals. Cool, and you can see all that movement. So you wanna tighten that one first. That's tight, these are finger tight. Now we can grab that bracket. So I've got our mounts hung right here, and you're gonna have 4 hardware setups here and here. Let me show you what the hardware setup looks like. So you've got your bolt, then you've got a split washer, flat washer, that's gonna go through the front, and then you've got a serrated flange nut that'll go on the back side. So you're gonna do that 4 here and 4 there. Then you grab a 16 millimeter socket, 16 mil wrench, and we can get it all locked down. And this top inner 16 mil bolt, it also has a cutout in this plate. It's a little tight, but there is that cutout for your 16 millimeter wrench. So when you're ready to tighten it down, I just throw an open-ended wrench on the nut, tighten it from the bolt head side, finish it off. Okay, next step is you're gonna wanna grab this T-bolt or a bolt plate. It's just a plate welded to a bolt. And we're gonna fit that up into the backside of this pedestal and fish it through to this last inside hole and slot. To do that though, there's really no way of fishing it through without some help. And so what we've included for you. I call these things sparklers because they look like a sparkler, but it's like a little helicoil spring, and it threads right on to the bolt. What's so neat about this is it's not any wider than the threaded shaft of the bolt, so you can pull it through really, really tight locations. Now, if you don't have one of these, we're gonna include one for you, but if you don't have one, there's other ways that I've done this. If you've got a welder at home, you can do it with a MIG welder or a TIG welder. If you've got a TIG, just take a thin piece of welding rod and just tack it in the center of the top of the bolt. And then you can use the piece of TIG rod to fish it through. If you're on a MIG welder, this one's a little different, but you actually wanna go ahead and spot weld right on the top. Try not to get your threads because you don't wanna gall up your threads. But if you can tack that wire and then let off, then you can go turn your welder off and just feed a bunch of MIG welding wire out and then cut it long. Bang, you basically got the same thing. Feed it through, then you can just work it back and forth, snip it off with a pair of wire cutters, and if you absolutely have to, you can just hit it with a flap disc. But that's a couple different options for you. So I've got the sparkler threaded on this T-bolt, and we are underneath the front left driver's side pedestal. Remember we had that big 18 mil M12 bolt that we put under here? So if you go to the outer rear side of this pedestal, there's actually a pretty good gap. That's where we're gonna feed this T-bolt up through. So I'm gonna get low, and you can see right up through the light coming out of that hole on the back side. So I'm gonna take this sparkler and you can just shoot it right through. Now, you just wanna feed that up and around, and then just pull that right through. All right, I've got that pulled through, and I'm gonna leave the sparkler on until we grab our washer, split washer, and nut, because we definitely don't want it falling back in until we're ready. Okay, let's get this sparkler off of the T-bolt, but I wanna try to save it if I can, so I'm just gonna spin it back. But I'm gonna work it back. I'm gonna use my other index finger to hold that bolt in place, because we definitely don't want it falling back down. So I'm gonna hold that there and have your hardware ready to go. So we're gonna take one of these smaller profile washers and one of our nuts. And I'm kind of keeping pressure on the threaded part of that bolt because I do not want it to fall back in on itself. There we go. Lock that down finger tight. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. One issue you might run into feeding that bolt plate up on this front passenger side pedestal is you gotta get three things to line up: the pedestal, the recovery point, and the winch tray. And if it doesn't, you're never gonna get that to feed through. So grab an 18, tighten the winch tray up from underneath first. Leave everything else loose. You want all those bolts loose first. So lock that down. Cool. Then grab yourself a pry bar or a dowel or a screwdriver, and then you can pry up on the recovery point, and you can look right through to make sure you see light. Get that position so everything's lined up properly. Now you can lock down these recovery points. So, and doing this by yourself could be a little tricky. I'm gonna try to hold this recovery point right there. Now let's get this bolt plate in this pedestal on the front right side. Now Ram, it's the same piece that they've got over on the driver's side. So the access hole is gonna be here on the inside rear, which means we've got to go up in and then kind of U-turn to come back out. So on this wire, I'm gonna put a little bit of a bend right about like that. And then when I feed it up, I'm gonna look through the hole, and there we go, look at that, first try. And then we'll slowly feed that through. Now, if your bolt plate gets stuck, you can always grab that screwdriver and put it in through this hole and try to smash it through the other side. All right, we're gonna throw that thin washer right there and our nut. All right, we've got our winch tray, our brackets, and our recovery points basically hung. We want to leave all of our hardware finger tight. The only two bolts on here that should be tightened down are these 18s on the bottom of the pedestal, here and here. Everything else leave it loose, because the critical dimension is these two plates on our brackets. Now they're slotted so you have left and right movement, but if you get these things locked down and they're too wide apart, then when we go to hang our bumper shell, it's gonna hit here. That's gotta go on the outside of this. So we're gonna leave it loose. Then when we go to put our bumper shell on, we'll fit it. We'll take some measurements off the truck to make sure we're centered up perfectly, and then we can start locking everything down. And now is the time to get your winch installed if you're gonna run one. So I've got a 12,000 pound synthetic rope Ironman 4x4 monster winch. I'm gonna get that all put in here, and then we'll jump back into the install. Smash cut, got the winch on the truck, looks great. That's all buttoned up and ready to go. Now we're gonna move on to getting all of our accessories bolted on the shell. I've got our Ironman 4x4 Bright Saber X dual row 32-inch light bar. So I'm gonna grab the light bar hardware. This is, well, I didn't have a metric Allen wrench, so I'm using a 9/16, but I think it's a number 5. So I've got this bracket on. I'll show you same thing on the other side. We're gonna grab that Allen head and a washer. There we go. And get that snugged. Then we are gonna grab from our pile of bumper hardware these M8s with the encapsulated washers on it and a serrated flange nut. And those are gonna drop right here through the bottom mounting slot. Now, if you don't have a light bar, that's okay. We've got this really cool hexagonal honeycomb protective plate, and you can bolt that in there in the stead of the light bar if you want. You can actually do both. You can get this cover on with the light bar. So on here, I'm gonna leave this Allen a little bit loose so that I have the adjustability of that slot on each side. Then we're gonna drop that straight down. Now we can grab these M8s, drop them down from the top, spin that serrated flange nut on. And if you haven't guessed, pretty much everything you're ever gonna work on, don't tighten it down until everything's kind of set, and then lock it down in place when you're happy. So now that things are snug, we can check the up and down of the light because it's on slots, and we can check the front and the back because this mount on the bumper is slotted front to back. So I'm just gonna push down on the light. I'm gonna grab a 13 and I'll snug that guy up. And then we can rock the bumper back. We can check our fit, or we can throw a fit after we check our fit. And actually, that looks pretty good. Might tilt it down a little bit. So here's the inside poop. You might think about leaving this, tightening down the side Allens, but leave it a little bit loose, because if you lock it down now, once you get it on your truck, you're gonna take it out at night, find like an empty parking lot with a big warehouse, find a big wall, and then turn on your light bar, and then you can position it to see. You don't want it too high, you also don't want it too low or it's useless. So then you can go out and aim it just by pushing here. Then you can reach up underneath and tighten down the sides if you take your bash plates back off. All right, light bar's in. We've got our wires tucked up and zip tied down. It's kind of nice. We got these little holes in those brackets for some wire management. Now we're gonna install our pod lights. So go ahead, get them all set up. And then we will take this spacer here. We'll drop that down. You wanna space them down so that it'll look correct. You know, if you leave the spacer out, it'll sit really, really high up against that top bar. So we'll space it down. I'll throw that nylock on. And range is cold, let them hang. Now we'll do the same thing. So we're gonna run on this truck amber 40s on the inside and these clear 40s on the outside position. Cool. Now I'm gonna grab a 13mm wrench. And this bracket here on the pod light, it's got these little depressed shoulders that hold the bolt head in place. So when you're tightening it down, pull back on the light, and that'll keep the bolt head from spinning on you. Okay, before we get it all the way tightened down, the bumper mount has a slot in it so you can slide the lights forward or back. I like to kind of tuck mine back all the way just for extra protection. And what's great is because these lights are offset, we've got tons of room to access our hardware here, so we can tighten these Allens down. Tighten that down. Tighten that down too. Flip around and get that other side done. All right, I'm gonna rock this bumper shell back. Cool, now we can get the fairlead in our front flip-up license plate bracket. You're gonna want those two big Allen screws, a couple washers, and the nylock nut. If you've got a winch, take your fairlead. I'll drop that through like that. And now, I do the front, grab a washer, nylock nuts, and we'll spin those on the back and get them tightened down. I'm gonna grab a number 6 Allen wrench for the front, lock that in there, and a 17 millimeter wrench or socket for the back. And since I'm here, I'm gonna grab a 4 Allen wrench and a 13, and I'm gonna snug this bracket up so it's not flopping around. It's got a nylon spacer in there, and then we'll get our license plate on at the end. So I just want that side snug. What's great about these flip down brackets is when you're driving around not using your winch, you can keep your plate down and stay legal if you're in a state that requires it, but it also keeps all of the rain and road grime off of your synthetic winch rope, which is awesome. And keeps the sun off of it too, so you don't bleach the thing out. All right, we've got the OEM bumper sitting up on the table. It has 2 wire harnesses in it. This is the parking sensor wire harness, and we've got the fog light wire harness. So grab yourself a clip removal tool, and we'll just start popping all of these out. I'm gonna start with the fog light harness first. Okay, let's see if we can feed this through without having to remove any of the housings. Yeah, buddy. All right, good news there. I did not want to have to undo all that mess. And as far as fog light harness is concerned, that's easy to remember because our main harness plugs go on the driver's side. Set it aside. Now we can start in on our parking sensors. So I'm gonna grab a silver Sharpie and I'm gonna write an up arrow pointing up on the back of each one of these sensors. Then I will know which way it goes. Cool, and there's 6 forward-facing parking sensors. All right, as long as you don't forget that the plug goes on the driver's side left front, then when we unhook all these parking sensors, it's gonna be really hard to get them confused because they've got this short little lead that goes up into the main loom. So I'm gonna grab a pick. They're in a plastic housing. You just pull one side back and kind of wiggle. You wanna get that tooth up and out. Same thing on the other side. A little bit of pressure, and they slide right up and out like that. I'm not gonna unhook them. We could, and we will, but for now, I'm gonna leave them in place because if I unhook them, they'll get mixed up. So I'm gonna do that 5 more times. 2 in the front, 2 on the outer, and 2 on the absolute outside wings. Okay, those are free. There we go. And then everything's gotta come past this support. All right, so I got a little ahead of myself here, but what I've done is I've flipped the bumper so the driver's side's here, passenger side's there. I've laid out our parking sensor wire harness. The main harness connector is over on this side. Then what I did was I unhooked 1, 2, and 3 of the front right side sensors. Right here, I've got them all laid out, so each sensor will go back, so I won't get confused. And then there is a cutout provision in the top of this plate that we can feed all of our cabling through. But you have to unhook the sensors to do it. And grab yourself a pair of wire cutters, and we're gonna clip off all those little plastic retainer Christmas tree plastic brackets. So we're gonna feed these connectors through. So it's a little slow and go, but that's okay. It's gonna be worth the wait. Okay. And how would you want to bet the camera guy's going to fast forward and this will be all done for you in like 2 seconds. I've got all of my parking sensors laid out in the same orientation. So I'm going to start with the most outer one. And what you're going to do is grab that sensor. I've got my arrow showing the orientation. You're going to grab one of the 6 parking sensor extension harnesses, and this guy goes in here like that. That clips into place. This end clips into the OEM harness. And then I'm just going to tuck this in here. We're going to come back. We have a fit kit that we'll address in a minute, but I kind of want to just get these all so we don't lose them. And work my way down the harness right here. Okay. Now, the most inside one, that's a little bit different with the routing. What we're gonna do is before we clip things through, we are going to take the small end that goes here and we're gonna feed it underneath this front plate right next to the light bar. There's a relief down there so that we can get this wire through, and then we'll have enough slack to make it work. We've got that plugged in there. Cool. That is how those route. Down under there, these 2 are up here. We'll get the fit kits on, then we can take care of all of our cable management. We'll zip tie everything up out of the way. That's gonna look pretty good. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now we can get the fit kit assembled for our parking sensors. So grab one of these foamy gray watermelons here, and it's got a little cutout. So if you squeeze down and pinch that center piece, we'll pop that out. Grab one of these caps, bruh. We'll peel the double-sided sticky off. Okay, there we go. Now, I'm gonna pop this sensor back out. Now, a couple things. This sensor has a little silicone ring around the outside of it. We wanna make sure that stays on. Now we're gonna fit that in. Now we'll take this cap, and these 2 cutouts are gonna fit right down over these fingers with a barb on them. And then we're just gonna push it down till it clicks on the back. That's not going anywhere. So go ahead and grab more of these. We're gonna do it all the way down for all 6 parking sensors. Okay, let's move on to these white marker lights. I've pulled the OEM wire harness for our fog lights out of the original Ram bumper, and I'm just gonna wire it up to our fog light switch. Now, you can wire these up however you want. The world is your oyster. All right, I've used that factory fog light harness, and I've wired it up here to these indicator lights. I'm gonna use them as fogs. If you wanna do the same thing, or just for reference, the brown wire is gonna be your hot power wire, and the blue is ground. So I've got mine all connected up and heat shrunk with watertight connectors. I'm just gonna wrap them up. I like to use 3M Super 33 or Super 88 electrical tape because it's really good and it does not come loose. So I'll wrap that up, and then we'll just work on getting this all zip tied up and looking clean. Let's put these on. Grab yourself an Allen wrench and a 10 mil, and we're gonna take these 2 sets of hardware that are already installed. There's one here and one on the end. So we're gonna take those out. All right, we're gonna take these out and set them aside. I'll do the same over there, and then grab this pack of hardware. We'll open it up, and that's got all the bolts, washers, and serrated flange nuts you're gonna need to get these little trim pieces bolted on right there like that. And like always, we wanna leave our hardware finger tight because these are slotted front and back, side to side. So once we get the bumper hung on the truck, it gives us a little bit of adjustment to trim it out under that headlight, under both headlights technically. And make sure that you go bolt from up under and then serrated flange nut on the top, because the whole reason why you use a serrated flange nut is because it bites in and you don't have to get a wrench on it from the top. So what we'll do is when we go to adjust these, we can get up underneath the bumper, get this trim piece all set where we want it, then just tighten it with the Allen head. But you're not going to be able to get to that nut coming in from the top because the headlight's going to be in your way. Now we're getting ready to hang our bumper. So grab these E-plates, and I like to run them with this little pin up top. They go just like that and they'll balance in there. There's one on this side, one on that side. Grab a buddy, because this is a two-man job. We'll grab the bumper shell. We're gonna fit it on. Now, when we get it close, make sure you've slacked out some line on your winch if you're running a winch, because you wanna feed this through the back of the fairlead so things don't get pinched. I'm gonna tuck it right there for now, and now we can grab the bumper. So I grabbed my good buddy Jordan, who doesn't know that I know that he hates me, and he's gonna help me hang this bumper. Thanks, buddy. All right, here we go. So we'll drop this rope down the fairlead, and then we're gonna rotate it up. Rotator, watch those lights. And we're trying to get the plates on the outside of the winch tray mounts. Okay, cool, we can let her hang. Awesome. Jordan, thank you for the help. I really appreciate it. Any inspiring parting words for me?
You're a freaking idiot.
Now that the bumper's hanging, let's get the rest of our bolts in. So you kind of look right through here and you're trying to line up the outer shell plate, the inner bracket, and then that threaded, E-plate with the welded nuts. So I've got a clear path right through here on the top. That is great. And I got one here on the bottom. So you're gonna kind of have to rock the bumper around. It also helps too, if you have a flashlight, you can always put it on the inside and backlight it, so then you can see when you're lined up too. All right, that went very well. I'm gonna go do the same thing on the other side, and then we can start to actually get this thing set in place and adjusted. All right, now that we've got the shell hung and our hardware is finger tight on those vertical mounting flanges, we need to go back and tighten up the brackets that fit over the frame horns. Remember, we left those loose so that we had that right to left adjustment. So you wanna make sure that the shell is centered up, and you can do that by checking your outer flanges here on the right and left. And once that looks good positionally that way, grab a 16mm wrench and a socket with an extension, because some of these are easy to get to and some of them are tight spaces. So I'm gonna go ahead and lock down all 8 of those. Okay, now that we've got the bumper on, what I'm gonna do is I've tightened my center mounting bolt on these vertical tabs on each side. I've tightened them down pretty good. Now I can rock the bumper up, down, level, push it back, forward, just a little bit. I've kind of messed with it. I've got it where I want. I'm kind of going off of these trim pieces here. Now you want a nice, almost a finger's width gap, because don't forget, your bumper is mounted to the frame of your truck. Your body is mounted to the frame, but on really soft rubber body mounts. Your body in the cab is designed to squish and to flex a little bit. Your chassis will not move. So what you'll see, like if you get a friend with like your iPhone and shoot it in slow-mo, if you're flexing your truck out and bouncing it, this is gonna move independently from your headlight. We don't wanna crack our headlights. So leave yourself a nice gap, between about 3/4 inch, or if you can fit your finger through there, I think you'll be safe. I wanna make sure I do a really good job and get both sides equal. So if you need to come up a little bit, you can always, take a dead blow and hit this just a little bit, just kind of trim it out back and forth. Once you get it set, then go back through and we'll lock it all down. And don't forget to tighten up these lower recovery mount bolts. They're 18s, nut and bolt. Double check the pedestal bolt, which is an 18. That's tight. And I'm gonna double check that T-bolt That 16 nut on the back is still loose. So don't forget to tighten that thing down too. All right, same thing on the other side. Now let's get these little trim pieces under the headlights tightened down. All right, we got the bumper shell locked down to the winch tray. Recovery points are tight. It's set where we want it. I'm very, very happy. Now here's the deal. I don't want this alignment to move on the truck at all. And there's kind of a cool little cheat we've done for you. There are, right there, that hole here on the outside of that vertical plate and up here, those are for your pinning holes. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this hardware, you're gonna drill a hole all the way through this back plate, then we'll run a pinning bolt down here and up here on each side, so you got 2 and 2. That locks that bumper into its position. So if you ever need to take your bumper shell off for any reason, you don't have to go back through that hassle of getting it lined up correctly. As long as it lines back up where you can get your pinning bolts through, you're good to go. I've got my pinning holes drilled. I'm gonna run these bolts in, grab a 16 mil wrench and tighten them down. All right, I got the truck lifted up in the air a little bit more now. I'm gonna hook up our wire harness connectors. So that is going to be fog lights. And this one here is our parking sensors. So once you get those clicked together, push that red tab safety back down. Now we can hook them back to where they go. And then I'm gonna grab some zip ties and get all this zipped up out of the way where it won't get pinched or damaged. Now we've got 2 more T-bolts left. We're gonna grab these little plastic washer retainers, these square guys here, and we're gonna feed this right up through the pedestal. And if you've got your wire, you can use that, but I think I can do this without it. Perfect. Then I'm gonna take this plastic washer. You can either push them on or they'll spin down too a little bit here. So we'll do the same thing on the passenger side, but don't forget the entry for this T-bolt is on the inside now. So you're gonna need to use one of these sparkler wires. And the more light you can put on this, the better. There you go. We'll feed it through. Almost ready to get our side plate protection on, but before we do that, we've got to clip in these little spring-loaded nutserts here. So you take 4 of them, and we're gonna pop them from the top down in these slots, and I just use a little pick and push, just like that. And then they've got a little slot there, so they're adjustable. There we go. And all I'm doing is I'm setting it in here, I'm just taking the pick and pushing in on that top flange. Basically just squeezing it together into place. Cool, now that that's in, let's grab our plate and our washer, split washer, and nut for this. So I've got our side protection plate, gravel guard, splash guard. It's gonna fit here, that 90-degree flanged with the slot in it. I'm gonna hang it there and then go flat washer, split washer, and the nut. And I'm just gonna get that finger tight and then we'll let it hang. We'll go grab the rest of our hardware that goes right here. So I grabbed the hardware setup for this. It's these guys here with the encapsulated washers. But what I'm gonna do, it's a 13mm wrench too. I'm gonna raise this up and just spin this nut down as tight as I can with my fingers. Now look, once we're done, we can come up back here and spin it down. So don't worry about it. I'm just gonna get it, you know, as tight as I can because it'll help hold it in place. There we go. Okay. Now, grab these guys, and I like to start in the center. Leave it a little loose so we have some adjustment. And then you're just trying to find those nutserts. Cool, and then you've got a little bit of adjustability here. And I'm gonna grab a 13mm socket and we'll get these guys locked down in place. All right, I like to tighten down the front one first. Then I'm gonna check the back. Just tighten it down enough so that spring washer's sitting flat, but I wouldn't go too much more because you've got to take these things on and off a bunch over the lifetime of this bumper. Now that T-bolt and nut are a 16 millimeter, so you kind of got to get your wrench up underneath from the back here, and I use the open face side and then just snug it down. Okay, cool. All right, we'll do the same thing on the other side. How you doing? Center gravel guard. To get it on, we have to loosen these two 18s on the bottom of the pedestal. Actually, loosen and then keep going and fully remove them. So we'll do that now. All right, I have got my gravel guard right here. It's gonna go up and over the recovery points. And then I've got some hardware. It's the last 4 of those guys there. And I'm gonna run one right here. I'll spin that down as tight as I can get it, and then we can let the plate kind of hang. Okay. Now I'll grab another one. Right over here. There we go. And these are 13s. If you've got a 13 socket. Great, we'll get the outer 2 done, and then I will put these 18s back where they go. Cool, all right. That looks good here up front, so I'm gonna get these going. And same story on these guys. You're probably gonna be taking these on and off a bunch. I don't know why, but you might. So don't kill them. Be kind, rewind. Bumper plates are installed. Now let's trim our stock inner fender liners here. So you can see here you got a real nice sharp line with a flange that peels up, so we can tuck these plastic fender liners inside. You really want to do this. It keeps all the mud and crud out. You don't want to fill these things up with dirt and be driving around, a bunch of gravel shaking around in there. So the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to push up. I've got an eye right down that line. I'm going to take my Sharp A, and I'm gonna actually draw that line right along that bottom rail and just walk it right back. Once I get to here, I'm just gonna come right up and back. Okay, cool. So now I've got a line, just like, you know, how we all cut our own hair. Go slow, take a little bit at a time, and eventually it'll look meh. So you don't actually have to use power tools. A good pair of like industrial scissors or even tin snips will work. And that is exactly what I'm gonna do. There we go. And don't forget, no one's gonna see your cut because you're tucking it back inside that plate. So, you know, don't worry. It'll still look good even if you do a bad job. Take this, don't get dust in your eye, and push the plastic liner up and in, because you can bend it and tuck it back up in that plate, like that. And there you go, Thaddeus. And then you can kind of see where you need to make more cuts. So again, just go slow. I'm gonna keep taking little pieces off until I can get this tucked in here. And then I will cut to the next scene where it's all gonna be done and look perfect. All right, I'm gonna try to get as many fender anchors as I can back in place. That'll help pull everything down, help us with our cut. In your kit, you're gonna have 2 of these resistors. They're if you want to turn one of your marker lights into a turn signal. You can just wire it directly in to your OEM turn signal harness, but to prevent hyperflash, you're gonna need to wire up a resistor. Grab your grill, remove your hardware that we tucked back here so we didn't lose it, all those little 10 mils. The fine machine threads go here on the metal radiator support, and the coarse ones go out here in this plastic piece. And then we're gonna tilt the grill forward. Be careful because you don't wanna scratch up your paint on the grill. And as you lower this down, slide it back into place, hooked over there, hooked it over there. Sweetness, it's our weakness. All right, now I'm gonna tighten the 2 center bolts down. Those are 10 mil. There we go. And on these plastic ones, go easy. Awesome. Now I'm gonna grab a ratchet and then I can feel hand tight. There we go. Then we're not stripping this stuff out. Top is bolted down. Now we're gonna push the bottom of the grill in because it's got those clips. So we're looking for a nice positive. I'm gonna lower the truck down so I can reach up here. We'll get this plenum snap back into place. Almost done. All right, I left this plastic plenum cover up in here, right up in here. I'm gonna fit it back down. I've got all my clips just waiting for us. Make sure they don't pop out. Lining it up. And then it is just pushing them back in. I think it is time to button this up. That's all she wrote. We are done. This bumper looks great. I love the design of these new Raid front bumpers. It's kind of got a bit of a pre-runner look, but you don't lose any of that Ironman 4x4 DNA and utility. You've got recovery points that actually bolt to the frame of your truck. 2-piece design, super easy install, getting that bumper shell hung on that winch tray. Easy access to your control box for your winch and to get up here into the clutch handle. We've wired up these marker lights. They look really, really good. You don't lose any of your truck's original functions. We've got all the parking sensors in here. I love the way this thing looks, and more so, I love the way that it performs and works. If you want info on this bumper or want to pick one up, go check it out at Ironman4x4America.com and we'll help you out over there.